Welcome to the Kind Futurist. We are your hosts, Helen Mekonen
and Urmilla Khan. We'll feature inspirational leaders and everyday heroes as we open the dialogue on what being wealthy really means for generations to come.
In this episode, we're going to be introducing you or reintroducing you to the concept of ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. And before we talk about each of those elements separately, what we thought we would do is just give you a sense as to where did this even come from, this concept of ESG. And what we are here to tell you is that it's actually through a combination of a number of different events that happened in the business community, and actions actually that the business community took based on events. So for example, in the 50s, the electrical and mine workers unions in the United States, they started investing pension capital in affordable housing and health facilities. That's huge. This is at a time when individuals didn't really speak out. But they did.
Absolutely, Helen. And so in the 60s, as we continue, during the anti-Vietnam War, there was the Black Power movement, which was even a further push for women's rights and the rights of farm workers, and even the Green Power movement. Then we move into the 70s, where
the birth of Earth Day. That's huge. This is where Senator Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin rallied 20 million to come together to protest environmental destruction. So these are events that happen where people are really taking a stance in making in raising their voice to make a difference in society overall.
Now, in the 80s, as we continue, an organization is formed. It's called the Coalition of Environmentally Responsible Companies. And that was because several environmental disasters occurred then at the hands of companies. So it was essential for everyone to come together and create that organization. As we move into the 90s,
that is where things started to be really more solid around putting an index. So this is called the Domini 400 Social Index. That's when it was created in the 1990s. And now this is the social index that organizations use in order to report back on ESG.
In 1992, there was an Earth Summit, very first in Rio de Janeiro, which brought together 154 countries to sign a treaty, and that was aimed to curb environmental impacts across the globe. So global citizenship in thinking is starting to take shape.
And in the 2000s, so many events have happened, from the very beginning of that century, the United National Global Impact was launched. This is the pact where companies are aligning their strategies and operations with the principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. This is where things are really solidified.
In 2011, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, so governance board, is launched. And what that does is it standardizes sustainably accounting and measurements across 77 industries.
And proud to say that Canada is one of those those countries as well that really takes accounting in a way where it's ethical and it feels pretty good about going and doing your taxes.
Yeah.
2015, that is when the Paris Agreement was brought to life during the United Nations Framework Convention. And when 2020 hit, we know what happened then. There was an uproar from a social justice movement with the Black Lives Matter movement. It brought to light so many disparities when it comes to social economic differences and variances, pay equity gaps. The list goes on and on and on.
And so as we looked at gaps and access, further focus now, markets and businesses, we're starting to look at how businesses can really fine-tune ESG measurements. They have the propensity to perform well from a financial perspective, as well as focusing on what happens to the environment and socially and from a governance level as well.
So that's a little bit of history. I'm just bringing you perspective in terms of how this term even came about. And so let's talk just very high level around the terms. Mm-hmm. So environmental factors, this is essentially how we use our natural resources, carbon emissions, energy efficiency, pollution, waste. Like these are all those elements.
Mm-hmm. As we look at social factors, things like workforce health and safety, diversity and opportunity policies that are being instituted by organizations, employee training, human rights, privacy and data security, and community programs.
And lastly, governance. This is board independence, board diversity, shareholders' rights, essentially business ethics.
I believe that's all for our first episode. Thank you for tuning in today. Join us next time when we bring more conversations to shape our world.